Hello guys, and welcome to my Magicka Melee Templar PvP build. This is a dual-wield resto Magicka Templar build that uses a lot of crit damage. It's a very high crit build, so it deals a lot of damage. It has pretty good sustain and can be quite durable as well. So let's jump into the build. Let's check this out, guys. So take a look at the stat page here. We can see we put all the points into Magicka. We have a pretty low maximum Magicka value at 33k. Something to keep in mind is that I am a Nord, so my max Magicka is going to be a little bit lower because of that. The ideal race for this build, guys, would be a High Elf or a Breton would be your best bet for that regen and that max Magicka. So we can see that we've got just about 20k HP, and we are not in PvP right now. So in PvP, we'd have 26k HP on this build, so a huge amount of hit points and just about 14k maximum stamina. So quite great stat pools all around, except the Magicka being a little bit on the lower end. Of course, if we were the right race, we'd be looking at around 33 or 35 to 36k Magicka on this build. For our spell damage, we're coming in at 2,717 unbuffed with 65.7% spell crit. Absolutely incredible amount of spell crit there. Let's fully buff up the spell damage so you guys can see it. 3,961 spell damage with both major sorcery and minor sorcery up. Minor sorcery, of course, we get from our Dawn's Wrath skills. So huge amounts of spell damage, almost 4k spell damage on this build. Very, very impressive. And then, of course, we've got that 65% crit rate to give us that huge amount of critical damage. Here you can see my jabs critting for over 6,000 on crit, so huge amount of crit on the sweeps there. Our spell and physical resistance is also pretty great. We've got 2k spell resist, not bad, and then 1,500 physical resist when we buff up as well. Just about 1,600 physical resist, so not terrible. And our critical resistance is coming in at 2,089, so a huge amount of crit resist on this build. We've got all this crit resist because we're not using damage shields on this build. This is kind of a heal away Templar build. Because we are playing such a high crit build, our heals are going to be very, very potent, so we should be able to full heal ourselves with one Honor the Dead on this build. So that's why we've gone the route of critical resistance, just due to the fact that we're not going to be using those damage shields. For the buffs that we have on this, or for the Mundus Stone on this build, I am using the Shadow, guys. This is going to give us a 12% increased damage to our critical damage. Absolutely incredible. Now, something to keep in mind is that you could run the Apprentice for spell damage here instead if you really wanted. You'd get similar damage outputs, but ultimately with the Shadow, your critical damage is going to be better and your non-crit damage will be a little bit worse. But I think the Shadow is the better bet between the two Munduses, so there you have it. We are a stage 4 vampire. Vampirism is important for this build as we do use vampirism skills. And then, of course, for the drink we're using, Witch Mother's Brew. So this is Magicka Recovery, Max Health, and Max Magicka. Okay, so let's take a look at that gear, guys. How are we getting these beautiful stats that you see here today? We're going to start with our helm and shoulder. We've got the 2-piece Slime Cross. So this patch, Slime Cross 1-piece item got switched to spell and weapon critical. So we're going to get about 5% more spell critical from our Slime Cross here, as well as it's going to increase our outgoing damage by 8%. So this is a really good set for Templar, DK, and Sorc now. This is probably best in slot for Templar, Sorc, and DK damage builds. Fantastic set there. The next set we have is Amber Plasm, and this is in our gear pieces on the chest and arms, and then we also have Amber Plasm in our rings and necklaces. This is a good set because it's going to give us a ton of regen, it's going to give us a bit more spell crit and spell damage, as well as max Magicka, and those are the three things we're looking for on this build. And then finally, the last set we're running is a 5-piece Julianos, and we only have this 5-piece on our dual-wield bar. When we swap to the Restoration Staff, we lose the 5-piece Julianos. This is only on the dual-wield swap. And there you have it. I used Julianos because it's a crafted set, and I wanted to have a Nirnhoned weapon, as you can see here. Nirnhoned got a bit of a buff this patch, making it uniquely best in slot for healing / damage in the game. So I thought a Nirnhoned main weapon would be really great for this build, get a big boost to my healing as well as a big boost to my damage as well. And then my off weapon, of course, is Precise, guys. And then finally, my Restoration Staff is infused, and I've got the increased weapon and spell damage enchant on there just to buff my weapon damage up to that just about 4k value. And of course, we've got Oblivion enchants on our Nirnhoned on our Nirnhoned and Precise dual wield weapons. And the Oblivion enchants are great because they're completely unmitigated for PvP. For the enchants on the rings and necklaces, I went with all spell damage, guys, as that is what we're stacking on this build. And then with the enchants on the gear, on the big pieces, I went with infused. as you can see here. And then on the little pieces, I actually went with impenetrable, and this is to give me that crit resist. As you can see for the enchants, we've gone with Tri-Stat Hacky Joes on all of our gear here. I know they're expensive enchants, and if you guys want to try this build out, but you don't want to go all out on your purse, you can definitely just put your Tri-Stat enchants on your infused large pieces, and then on your little pieces, you can just run Max Magicka, and you should be okay. But if you have the money, I would recommend Tri-Statting the whole thing. The increased stamina and health does really come in handy, and of course, we are stacking spell damage to deal our damage on this build, and we're a crit build, so we don't really need a huge Max Magicka value. Okay, so let's take a look at those skills we're using. On our dual wield bar, our first ability coming in here is Puncturing Sweeps. This is going to be your mainstay damage dealer for the build in melee range. This is a fantastic move for Templar. It strikes 4 times, dealing 140% additional damage to the nearest enemy that you hit, which is absolutely incredible. On top of it, it is an AoE, so it's going to damage anyone that's in the cone in front of you, and the last enemy hit is going to be snared by 70% for 2 seconds. Now, the cool thing about Puncturing Sweeps is that it heals you while you deal the damage. Fantastic spammable skill. You can pretty much just spam sweeps on most things to kill them on this build, and you shouldn't die. The next ability we have is Toppling Charge. This is a mix of our Gap Closer and our Stun for the build. Great ability for the Templar. Deals quite a bit of damage. Of course, it's an Adric Spear skill too, so it has a chance of proccing Burning Light. The next ability we have is Honor the Dead. This is going to be your mainstay heal for the build. Honor the Dead's great because if you heal yourself while below 75%, you get 60% of the ability's cost back over 8 seconds, so it makes it great for sustaining. And the great thing about it is that if you use Honor the Dead to heal yourself and go into Mist Form, you still get that Magicka back, so it's really great to use in pair with Mist Form, which is what we're doing on this build here. And then we've got Inner Light. Inner Light, of course, is going to give us 7% bonus to our Max Magicka, 5% from the skill itself, 2% for being a Mage's Guild skill. It's also going to give us Major Prophecy, increasing our spell critical rate by 10%. And, of course, this is going to be access to some stealth detection for us. So this is mostly just a buff to have on this bar here, but it is great for the stealth detection as well. And then finally, the last normal ability we have is Dark Flare. Now, I actually have been playing around a lot with Dark Flare, and I know this is a melee-based build, so if you want to change this out for something else, you totally can, but I really enjoy the Dark Flare. And I like it a lot for that intro into your Gap Closer. You start at a distance, give them a poke with the Resto Staff, and then switch over to this bar, Dark Flare, into the Gap Closer, and you can deal a huge amount of burst damage to your target if you use that combination of attacks, and of course it's going to stun them as well from your Gap Closer. So I've been enjoying Dark Flare a lot. Dark Flare, of course, is great for that healing debuff that it gives as well. 30% less healing to your targets comes in really handy for PvP against tankier specs. And then, of course, it makes your next attack empowered, increasing the damage it deals by 20%. And for the ultimate, now the ultimate is really kind of up to you guys. There's a couple really good options here. Our Templar options, I wouldn't really recommend any of these. I mean, maybe if you wanted to use a Templar bursty ult, you could go for Crescent Sweep, but this is still a physical damaging ultimate, so there's kind of that to take into account. You could always go for Empowering Sweep too. It's going to deal less damage than Crescent Sweep, but it'll make you a little tankier, so it's kind of up to you. I have the dual wield ultimate here, and I really like this ultimate actually. On the live server, I have this morphed to the Rend morph, which increases the amount of time that it lasts for. It's a 16-second dot, ticks every 1 second, and heals you for half the damage done. So it's a very powerful ultimate. I really enjoyed using it on the live server, but it's really up to you what you want to use here. And then, of course, because this is your burst bar, I would recommend that if you guys wanted to use Dawnbreaker of Smiting, you totally can. We could totally put Dawnbreaker of Smiting here. It deals a lot of damage, it's a great burst ult, and of course it's a big AoE stun as well. And something to note is that this patch, Dawnbreaker, is now undodgeable again. So this is a huge AoE undodgeable stun of an ultimate, so that's always a good option too. So you've got a lot of different options for your front bar ultimates on this build. So let's take a look at the Resto bar. The first ability we have here is Blazing Spear. Now this is going to be your AoE field, so that you're just going to kind of throw this down to set yourself a field of AoE control. Of course, throwing a Blazing Spear down into jabs is a great way to do a lot of AoE damage to everything in front of you. Blazing Spear is great too because your allies can activate the synergy to restore some resources for themselves as well. The next ability we have is Purifying Light. Now, I have Purifying Light here just to add that burst to the build. We are not running Radiant Destruction on this build, so Purifying Light is kind of like your finisher skill. So you're going to open with, like, let's say, a Resto Light attack, Purifying Light, Dark Flare into the toppling charge, and then jab them down, and the Purifying Light should go off at some point in your jabs, allowing you to deal a huge amount of damage to your target. Purifying Light's cool too because it also heals you after the effect ends, which is pretty sweet. It's very Templar-esque to have our abilities heal us when we use them, so even our offensive ones, so it comes in pretty handy there. And it's also really cheap, so it's a very cheap offensive skill to add some burst as well. The next ability we have is Elusive Mist. Now, this is going to be your mobility / get the hell out of there without dying ability. Elusive Mist is your mainstay defensive skill for this build. You're going to use it to move around, you're going to use it to prevent yourself from taking big incoming damage, etc. And most importantly, you're going to use it to run away. Elusive Mist is absolutely incredible for getting away, and we have a very powerful crit build right here. So, one Elusive Mist into a Breath of Life, or Honor the Dead, and then right back into Mist, and we can maintain ourselves for quite a long period of time in the Mist. Of course, using Elusive Mist will cut off your Magicka recovery, so that's something to keep in mind if you're using it, and there you have it. The next ability we have is Extended Ritual. This is going to be our Purify, remove all those dots. Of course, it's going to throw down a healing field that heals us over time as well, and while we stand in the field, we're going to get a bonus to the increase, we're going to get an increased bonus to the amount of healing we do as well. The allies can also activate the synergy off this ability to remove all negative effects from themselves, so this adds even more group gameplay kind of to this build. And then the last normal ability we have is Channeled Focus. Channeled Focus is an absolute must for this build. We've gone with Channeled Focus, of course, because it restores that 120 Magicka every 0.5 seconds once we throw it down. And this Magicka recovery goes through our Mist form, so this is to help us keep a good uptime on our returning Magicka, even while we're using Mist form a lot for defenses on this build. This, of course, will also give you access to your Major Resolve and Major Ward, increasing your physical and spell resist, which is awesome. And then on top of it, this is going to increase the healing you do as well when you throw this circle down, because it is a healing circle. So, the ultimate that we have on the build is Devouring Swarm. Now, I went with Devouring Swarm because it's just a great tanking ultimate. I'm sure you guys have seen this many times. Pop the Devouring Swarm into the Blazing Spear and then just jab them away. You've got a huge amount of healing coming from this, and not only that, but you're going to deal an insane amount of damage to whatever is standing in front of you. They're going to take a lot of pressure, so that's why I've gone with Clouding Swarm on this build, or Devouring Swarm. Devouring Swarm, of course, is fantastic for keeping you alive. Then between this and Biting Jabs, and of course the Rend ultimate, if you want to use that one, we've got 3 separate abilities that all heal you while they do damage. So very strong incoming healing on this build. Alright guys, so let's check out those champion points. We're going to start in the green tree to begin. In the tower, we've got 20 Warlord, 1 Siphoner, and 4 Sprinter. Warlord, of course, important because we do need to break free. Sprinting is something you do in PvP, and that's just where I had an extra point. In the Lover tree, I've got 56 in Arcanist for the 12% Magicka recovery, 32 Mooncalf for 8% Stam, 28 in Tenacity because we are using a Resto Staff, so we want to return some resources off of that, and then 4 in Healthy. That's just because I had a few points left over. In the Shadow Tree, I've got 51 in Tumbling, giving me a 19% reduced cost on my dodge roll. Absolutely incredible. We've got 10% Shadow Ward, 23 points in here to reduce the cost of block, and then just 1 in Befoul to increase the effectiveness of our healing reduction abilities by 1.1%. I honestly wouldn't, like, I know Befoul's a little tempting because we are running Dark Flare, but I wouldn't put too many points in here, just due to the fact that we do need this Sustain, and I think the points are more valuable to use on Sustain than they are to increase our healing reduction abilities. Alright, so let's take a look at that blue tree, guys. We've got 61 Elfborn, 32 Elemental Expert, and 36 Spell Erosion. So we've got a lot of focus on Elfborn here as we are playing a powerful crit build. This is going to be absolutely fantastic. 21% additional critical damage. That's a huge amount. So that goes real great. Elemental Expert, of course, this is going to be good for increasing all of our outgoing damage by 8%, and Spell Erosion to give us around 3k spell penetration, which is around 6% increased outgoing damage from all sources. And we've got 15 in Bless just for a little bit of healing power here. In our Atronach tree, we've got 40 in Master Arms and 5 in Staff Expert. Of course, Staff is what we're using to return resources. Our Resto Staff, not necessarily to deal damage, so no focus on Staff Expert there. Master of Arms, we don't have a stark focus on either. The only thing that this is really going to affect the damage of is our Dark Flare and our Toppling Charge. And all of our other abilities are AoEs or damage over time classified. So there you have it. Not a huge focus on Master at Arms. And we've got 31 in the Thaumaturge, and this is to increase our damage over time effects. So this is going to affect things like Jabs, Bat Swarm, Blazing Spear, all those good abilities. The Rend ability off our dual wield, so we've got a bit of focus there. This is also nice because this adds a little bit of crit chance to our dual wield bar. Not a huge deal that it crits, but it is nice to have that 12% bonus crit. In the red tree, we've got 61 Ironclad, 10 in Spell Shield, and 40 in Resistant. Ironclad, of course, is going to be our best resistance against incoming burst. This is going to reduce the damage of all direct damage attacks by 21%, which a majority of burst skills are direct damage. Spell Shield is great, going to give us 1k more spell resistance. 40 in Resistant for another 1k crit resist. This is the other half of the resistance that I get through my gear. And then 10, and then in the lady, we've got 10 in light armor focus to give us that 1k physical resistance as well. We've got 23 hardy, 23 elemental defender for 6% reduced incoming from all around, from magic and physical damaging abilities, and then 5 in thick skin just for a little bit of incoming reduced damage over time. We didn't put too many in here because we are a Templar and we have access to a very strong perch. And then we've got 43 in quick recovery for that 10% bonus to our healing, and 5 in expert defender to reduce the damage that light and heavy attacks do by 3%. Alright guys, so let's do some PvP commentary. As you can see, this is kind of a longer clip. This is a 5-minute clip, and right at the end of it there, I did get a kill on that guy, but it just kind of was at the beginning of the clip recording, right on that 5-minute mark, so we did miss out a little bit. So, as you can see here, there's a bunch of blues on this keep, just kind of attacking it, and I am just pestering them with Dark Flares. I did kill one guy there with the Dark Flare. You can see that my Dark Flares are hitting like 8k no crit on these guys. I've gotten like 12 to 15k crits with my Dark Flares on the live server. That being said, though, guys, this build is much better on the PTS than it is on the live server, so the build that I'm running here on the live server is similar, but it's not as powerful, so it's something to keep in mind there. So that blue just kind of ignores me, and I go right back to the guys on the siege just to kind of tickle them a little bit more. A little bit of a resto heavy attack on this guy. And there we go. There's what I was looking for. A guy coming on my right here as well. Right into my misform. I decide that I got to kite out of here. Just kind of get my ground against these guys. Play in my zone, not theirs. So here you can see I put my defensive circles down. I throw my blazing shield down. And I get a flare off on this Templar here. Go for the stun on him. I actually managed to do a pretty decent amount, or a little bit of damage to him, but there are other players there that are making sure he doesn't die. I take a soul assault there, just a quick roll dodge heal into the misform just to back right around these guys. I try to do a gap close there, that's why I hold still and don't really cast, but it doesn't go off, so I go right back into my misform. There's a quick purge. Now they respond with Destro ulti on me. Here you can see I go for a heal just at the last moment. Another heal right into misform just to kind of tank out the rest of his ultimate, using the trees there as my shield and using that misform mobility to make sure that I can stay away from these guys and that I don't get killed by their big AoE zones. And I go right back around the trees, and we are right back where we started. These guys, of course, are a little bit more coy now. They know that I'm going to be trickier to kill in this location, so they decide to kind of pull out just a little bit. Also, the wall has gone down, so there's not as many DC out here anymore, which is exactly what I want. So I engage with one Nightblade here, and she just kind of like heals herself up a little bit, tanks me out. Another Nightblade jumps on top of me with a bunch of whambush spam. Doesn't really do a lot of damage. I make sure to come right back into my spot, throw my circles down, throw the heal up. I come right back around this corner, and I drop a blazing spear on the corner, making sure to keep those guys from running through that corner. I get a huge dark flare off on this guy into the toppling charge, and just a little bit of jabs there. I get interrupted by the other player with a stun, but I do manage to capitalize on that player there before I go down. And I'm just left to fight this guy here. So he's got some distance fighting skills. So he's fighting me at a distance here using those stuns. I'm just keeping my circles down, making sure to stay very tanky to this guy. I go for the Dark Flare. I intend to gap close into him, but he actually snares me right before I do. But the Dark Flare is actually enough damage to take him down anyway. I get a nice crit on him there. So let's move on into the keep and see what these blue are up to in there. Just kind of misting my way in here. Being careful, of course. Jumped by another Nightblade out here. I go right into my Clouding Swarm, Blazing Spear on top of him. One Dark Flare into the jabs. Now, he could have bashed my Dark Flare there, but he wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. He was more focused on what he was doing, so he didn't take advantage of that. I see another player here, a huge Dark Flare into Toppling Charge combo. Absolutely annihilate that guy. And that's that big beefy combo I was telling you guys about with the Gap Closer being so powerful on this build when you lead into it with the Dark Flare. So I work my way into the keep. I pop a Stealth Detect as I am using Spell Power, Spell Detection, and Max Magicka potions. So I pop the Stealth Detect, pull the Nightblade out, but unfortunately Blue decides to show up, and they're going to fight me a little bit here. I get the Nightblade one-on-one kind of in the corridor, but he takes a bit of damage for me and decides to run away. My jabs do a great job of just out-healing the incoming damage I'm taking there. So I just come right back around the corner just to kind of reset, go for a quick Breath of Life, or sorry, Honor the Dead, and throw my Blazing Spear down, of course, so they can't re-stealth. But these guys are coming on me with some good pressure here, and I am getting dotted up pretty bad. We've got Power of the Lights on me, etc., so lots of heavy damaging abilities on top of me there. So I come back into the corridor, and there you see that great use of the Mist Form, just making sure to stay very mobile on these guys. I don't have access to the Major Expedition outside of Mist Form. Well, actually, in this video, I do have Dual Wield on, but that's a little bit of a change I made. This video was shot a little bit earlier on in this build's development, so the skills I'm using here are a little bit incorrect. But anyway, I get trapped here by all the blue, kind of playing around here as long as I can. I go into my Devouring Swarm, and you see the Devouring Swarm really saves my bacon there, prevents me from getting killed by those guys as they jump on top of me. I go for another Purge around the corner, and I've got so many negative effects on myself, it doesn't even remove them all, and down I go to the enemy player. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And I don't have a lot of footage, I'm sorry, because again, this is a PTS build. I'm very excited for this PTS, guys. I'm very excited for the changes coming with Horns of the Reach. So there you go. I said it last video, I'll say it again. See you guys next time. Have a good night.